Hey guys, it's Sagar, and in this video, we are going to take a very detailed look at all the cameras on this iPhone 15 Pro. During the last month, I had traveled over 3000 kilometers with this phone, so I was able to take a lot of image and video samples. Now, I have a ton of image and video samples to show you guys, but before that, let us check out the cameras that we are working with. Just like on the iPhone 14 Pro, the primary camera on this iPhone 15 Pro again gets a 48 megapixel sensor, but now the image sensor is even bigger. It gets a f1.8 aperture and a 24mm lens. The next sensor and lens combo is carried forward from the previous iPhone, which means it retains a 12 megapixel sensor and gets f2.2 aperture and a 13mm ultra-wide angle lens. Unlike the iPhone 15 Pro Max, this one just gets a 3x telephoto lens and not a 5x one, and that was actually one of the main reasons why I went with this phone. I feel like I am not going to be in a lot of situations where I am going to need a 5x optical zoom lens, but that is just me. With that, let us dive into the image samples. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I traveled a lot with this phone, and during that time I got to take a ton of images in all sorts of weather and lighting conditions. It was great to see that the main camera can capture these kind of details when it was raining. Even as I zoom in, you can see that there is a ton of information in this shot. Fortunately, the overcast conditions and the rain did not last all that long, and I got to see how the camera performed in well-lit conditions. As you might expect, the 48 megapixel sensor behind the main camera can capture a ton of details when the lighting conditions are this good. You might know it by now that although the images are being captured with the 48 megapixel sensor, the resulting images have a bint 24 megapixel resolution. Apple says that they have done this so the images have great details and amazing dynamic range at the same time. Coming to the dynamic range, I have been a bit critical about the dynamic range on iPhones for the last couple of years because honestly, I don't think Apple has improved it a lot since the Smart HDR 2. Fortunately, that changes this time with the iPhone 15 series, and the Smart HDR 5 algorithm on these phones brings along some really needed improvements. You can see for yourself how good these shots turned out. Everything in this shot looks so good. The brighter parts of the structure are not overexposed, and at the same time there is a lot of information in the shadowed part, which makes the overall shot look so good. I feel like it has been ages since I have seen an iPhone take a shot like this. Monica was standing in the shadow, and the Taj Mahal behind her was lit by a really harsh sun, but the Smart HDR 5 on this iPhone 15 Pro worked its magic and did really well to make the shot look balanced. I remember that last year, the iPhone 14 Pro struggled a lot in these kind of conditions. It could either keep the shadowed part or the brighter part of the image under check, but not both. I am finally glad that I can take these kind of shots with my iPhone. Now, I am not saying that this is the best phone to capture HDR shots, as I am sure there are others in the market which are a bit more aggressive with the HDR algorithm. But the HDR shots on this generation of iPhones have seen a great improvement compared to the last few years, and I count this as a big win. I like the colors coming out of this phone. Occasionally, there is a slight green tint in few of the images, but it doesn't happen too often, and when it does, you can easily fix it by adjusting the tint slider from within the image editor. Other than that, I am really satisfied with the colors. There might be a hair more contrast in these shots compared to the actual scene, so I can say that these shots look exactly how the scene looked in real life, but to an untrained eye, they might look close enough. This time, I think Apple nailed the colors on their iPhone 15, as I feel that one captures the scene exactly how it was. So if you want accurate looking colors, go with the iPhone 15 instead of this iPhone 15 Pro. That being said, since a couple of years, we have photographic styles on iPhones, and thanks to them, you can tweak the colors, saturation, contrast and tone in these images however you want, and once I tweaked these settings a bit, the colors started looking closer to how the scene looked in real life. iPhones have always been one of the best when it comes to focusing. They are quick and the transition is very smooth. This becomes very important while taking close-up shots. Just look at how good these ones turned out. The subject is in perfect sharp focus, and thanks to the wide aperture and large sensor, the background gets a very nice bokeh. Speaking of the large sensor, this phone suffers from the same issue that we have seen on so many other flagship phones. Now because the sensor is so big, you will have to be a few inches away from your subject than you would usually want to be while taking close-up shots, and you do have to get used to this. If you remember, this was so much worse on the iPhone 14 Pro last year, and I had to be even further away on that phone. Apple has improved the minimum focusing distance on this iPhone 15 Pro slightly compared to the last year, but I still like to take my close-up shots by hitting the 1.2 or the 1.5x button. I think this looks much more pleasing, and we basically get to be closer to the subject. It is still digital zoom, but thanks to the big image sensor and the new image processing pipeline, these are effectively lossless zoomed in shots. All of that being said, once the close-up shots are captured, they look amazing. To get even closer to your subject, you can switch to the macro mode and it will let you take shots like this. Unlike on other phones, these are 12 megapixel macro shots, so there are a lot of details here. You might be thinking when we saw the back of this phone that we don't get a dedicated macro camera, but the ultra-wide camera on this phone delivers these cool looking macro shots. I think this is the best way to achieve these images, but I do wish that there was some sort of stabilization for this mode, as you have to be very steady if you want your macro shots to be in sharp focus. Since we are already talking about the ultra-wide angle lens, here are how the ultra-wide angle shots from this lens look like. It lets you capture so much more of the scene compared to the main camera, which in comparison seems to have a very narrow field of view. I mentioned this earlier that this is the same camera and lens that we saw on the iPhone 14 Pro, so the results might be very similar. But thanks to the new image processing, these shots are a bit sharper. I don't switch to the wide lens very often because as good as it is, its images are not as sharp or detailed as the ones from the main camera. That is just how these cameras are made. I also wish that there was a bit more information in these images. Maybe Apple could put an even higher resolution sensor behind this lens, because trying to cram all this information in just a 12 megapixel shot doesn't seem to be doing justice to it. This lens does come in very handy in the situations when you want to capture more of the scene but there is not enough space to move back. As you can see, it is doing a decent job even in overcast lighting conditions. That being said, I would still say that this camera won't be my first choice if I have the option of moving back and taking the same shot with the main camera. Now the next camera on this phone lets you get closer to your subject, like you can see here. The main camera will help me set the scene, but the 3x telephoto lens just makes the composition look so much better. In this shot, it lets me get rid of all the distractions or unwanted elements in the shot and just focus on the beautiful architecture. There is also a 2x digital zoom option, which captures a 12 megapixel image from the middle portion of the 48 megapixel sensor. So if we are getting technical, this is actually a lossless 2x 12 megapixel image. Thanks to this option, we have 4 different focal lengths with just 3 cameras. Now Apple includes the 1.2x and 1.5x option that we get by zooming in on the main camera as different focal lengths, so according to them, we get 7 different focal lengths from just 3 cameras. I think that is a bit of stretch, and realistically, we get 5 different camera options if we include the macro mode from 3 lenses, which is still pretty amazing. You can keep on zooming digitally up to 15 times. Those images don't look that good, but they are hugely improved over last year. A bigger surprise is how good the 5x and 10x digitally zoomed in images look. These are again much better than any of the previous iPhones. If there is ample amount of light and you have steady hands, these images end up looking good enough. Now I could have gone with the 15 Pro Max just for that 5x optical zoom, but I feel like the 77mm on this phone is a more useful zoom range compared to the 120mm on the 15 Pro Max for my photography style. Now we are going to come back to the main camera to check out the 48 megapixel shots and compare them against the bin 24 megapixel ones. For taking these 48 megapixel shots, you will have to switch on one of the max modes from within the camera settings. While the default 24 megapixel shot could be anywhere between 2.5 to 7 MB in size, the same shot when being captured in 48 megapixel mode can end up taking up to 120 MB of your phone's internal storage space, which is crazy if you think about it. Since the 24 megapixel shots also have a ton of information, you will have to zoom in at least 7 to 8 times to see any noticeable difference between the 48 and 24 megapixel shots. And once you do, you will find that the 48 megapixel shots not only have more information, but they also manage the noise much better. These are ProRAW images, so they have some computations pre-applied. But there is a ton of room and information if you want to edit them even further. You can play with the colors, highlights, shadows, exposure, tone, crop in to recompose the shot and do so much more with these images. The possibilities are endless. This mode comes in very handy when you want to capture images of some architecture or landscape where you would want to preserve most of the details or zoom in on some part of the image later on. All that being said, the 24 megapixel shots also hold on to a ton of details, and if you think about it, the file sizes of the 48 megapixel shots are enormous, so your phone's internal storage might be filled out in no time. So I would suggest you for most of your normal day-to-day shots, just stick to the default 24 megapixel mode, as those images have plenty of details as well. Portrait shots. If you guys are not taking these, you are missing out. No matter which phone you have, images shot in this mode instantly stand out and look a lot more professional. Now on the iPhone 15 series, Apple makes it easier than ever to capture these shots. Whenever you have people or faces in the shot, or whenever you tap to focus on a certain part of the shot, the phone starts capturing depth information as well, and later on you can decide if you want to make that image a portrait shot or not. We have now got to a point where the edge detection on these portrait shots is near perfect. It wasn't this good when I first got the phone, but Apple has kept on refining it via updates. The LiDAR sensor on the back of this phone also helps detect the edges better. I think the key to getting these shots look good is to shoot at a slightly higher aperture number. By default, the f number is set to f2.8. You can lower it down to something like f4.2 or f4.3 and your shots will look a lot more natural. The iPhone 15 Pro allows you to take 2x and 3x zoomed in portrait shots as well, which is great because the best looking portrait shots are always being shot with either 50 or an 85mm lens on an actual DSLR camera. And having the options of these focal lengths makes the cameras on the iPhone 15 Pro even more versatile. I use a 3x optical zoom lens while taking this portrait shot, and it helped me bring the Taj Mahal in the background closer thanks to the natural optical lens compression. I'm sure that is what made this shot look so good. This 15 Pro takes amazing portrait shots even when the lighting conditions are not ideal, like when you are indoors or when it is overcast. It still detects the edges like a champ, is quick with it, and the images don't have noticeable amount of noise in them. For taking portraits of objects, I would again suggest you to increase the f-stop number a bit to about f4.0 and your shots will turn out so much better. I am not talking about on just the iPhone 15 Pro. This is true for any phone that you might have. Once you have done that, you will find that the edge detection is just as accurate or maybe even slightly better than how it was while taking portraits of people. I don't know why it is so, but many people don't even make the right use of the portrait shots on their phones. I wish they switched to this mode more often and experience how much better their shots can turn out. How often do you guys use the portrait mode on your phone? Please let me know in the comments. And just like that, we now come to the images which I clicked in indoors, artificial and lower lighting conditions. It should not come as a surprise that the main camera on this iPhone 15 Pro takes just as good looking images in these lighting conditions as it did during the daytime, and it doesn't even break a sweat. These are again 24 megapixel shots because the 48 megapixel mode isn't the best when it comes to capturing images in these lighting conditions. Even then, you can see there are plenty of details in these artificially lit 24 megapixel shots. As we get to even lower light, I am surprised to see that there is absolutely no noise at all even in the darker parts of these images. Apple now processes these images in a way that the colors look a lot more natural. If you remember, last year I had a small complaint that the 14 Pro tends to cool the colors down a bit when shooting in lower light. That is no longer an issue on this iPhone 15 Pro. 99% of the time, the colors that you see in this shot was how the scene looked in real life. Another good thing about these images is that they don't look too processed, or there is not that extra bit of sharpening that sometimes manufacturers resort to in order to hide the noise in their low light shots or to make the shots appear more detailed. There is nothing of that sort going around in these low light shots. All of these were normal low light shots without the night mode. But when you actually switch to the night mode, or when it comes up when the light is just not enough, you can see the difference that it makes. There's not just more light being introduced, but everything looks much more detailed, and the brighter lights are also being handled in a much better way. You can see the area around the light is not blown out in the shot with the night mode turned on. Unlike some other phones, this iPhone 15 Pro doesn't add a ton of light in these shots, making them look like they have been captured during the daytime. It makes the night shot look like they have been captured at night. It just adds a bit more details and that's it. There is some amount of noise in these shots which you can see if you zoom in on the darker parts, but it's minimal and it is not distracting at all. Apple mentioned in their keynote that there is new coating on the lens which takes care of the lens flare, and that is true to some extent. The kind of flares that you would get when the light source or the sun is on the edge of the frame are no longer an issue. But the light flares and the light orbs during the night time are still very much an issue, and I'm surprised at how Apple, a multi-trillion-dollar company, is not able to solve this one. You might have not seen them in my images all that much, as I was very careful while composing the shot to minimize them, but it is still very much an issue for many people. Just like it did during the daytime, the wide lens lets you capture a different perspective of the same scene and shows much more of it. We went through this earlier that the wide lens doesn't have the best image sensor of the lens optics, and this results in an even bigger difference in the normal and wide shots in lower light. There is so much more information and less noise in the normal shots compared to the wide ones. Yes, the wide lens also gets a night mode, but these images take over twice as long to capture compared to the night mode from the normal lens. And that means you will have to hold the phone steady for over 3 to 5 seconds for these images to look decent. Because of all these reasons, I would just suggest you to stick to the main camera for most of your low light shots. That brings us to the front facing camera. I believe this is the same hardware that we saw on the iPhone 14 Pro. 12 megapixel sensor with f1.9 aperture and a 23mm lens. But thanks to the new image processing, the selfies from this phone look a lot sharper and detailed. Skin tones look good, and the color temperature and white balance are also now more consistent while taking selfies. I don't take too many selfies outside of these camera reviews and comparison videos, but if you guys do, you are going to love the selfie camera on this phone. The edge detection is near perfect for portrait selfies, but if you want it to be even better and want your portrait shots to look more natural, lower the f number from f2.8 to something like f4.0. Now since just the face is in focus and everything else is gradually blurred out, your faces in these ones look even sharper than the normal selfies. That being said, despite of having autofocus and advanced image processing algorithms, if you have multiple people in your shot and they are not in the same plane of focus, someone will still be blurred out. I just wish Apple could fix this thing. If I have multiple people in my portrait selfies, I would like every one of them to be in sharp focus, not just the ones who are closest to the camera. Here's a video from the front-facing camera of the iPhone 15 Pro. You can see how it is handling the overall colors of the scene, exposure and stabilization when I am walking around with it. There is a busy road next to me, so you guys can also let me know how this phone is handling my voice. It can shoot videos at cinematic mode, and that is what I am shooting this video at. And the key to make these videos look good is to shoot at a high f-stop value. This video is being shot at f8.0, and I think that makes the background look really good, and the edge detection around me is looking pretty natural as well. iPhones have always been the best when it comes to shooting videos, but this year Apple took it to a whole new level. They didn't go crazy and add some 8K video recording option which most of the people won't use anyways. But with the iPhone 15 Pro series, Apple has given the pro smartphone videographers what they have always asked for, the ability to shoot ProRes log videos natively. This gives you a ton of flexibility if you like to grade your footage later on, and these log videos pack in a huge amount of information. Now I know most normal people don't even care about this or would ever use this feature, but if you're a smartphone videographer, you know what all this means. There's just no other smartphone in the market which comes even close. These log videos are huge and take a ton of storage space, so it would be best if you record these ProRes log videos on an external SSD, which you can now also do thanks to the USB Type-C ports on these phones. For everyone else, the normal videos from these phones also look excellent as they have always been. The colors look natural, there is amazing dynamic range, and there is just an overall pleasing look to these videos that no other smartphone manufacturer has been able to replicate yet. If you plan on shooting videos with your phone, iPhone is your best bet. You can now switch the lenses while you are shooting 4K 60fps videos. So now you can go from the ultra wide to the normal to the telephoto lens like you can see in this video while you are recording 4K videos at 60fps. And just like that, we have seen close to 125 image and video samples from all the cameras on this iPhone 15 Pro. While I loved the cameras on this phone, the overall experience of taking these images and videos has not been the smoothest or the most pleasing one. One of the biggest issues that I had with this phone is that it gets really hot when I'm shooting images and videos. At least my phone does. Apple knows about this and they have released a few updates which has made things a bit better, but it still gets really hot when I'm shooting images with it. It doesn't shut down or anything like that, but the display gets very dim and this part over here gets uncomfortably hot. Leaving this thing aside, I feel the cameras on the iPhone 15 Pro are definitely an upgrade over the previous generation, and I'm so glad that Apple has finally managed to fix the HDR mode on these phones. And finally, I feel like the ability to shoot ProRes log videos puts this phone in a completely different category altogether. I feel more and more confident of having this as my main camera for shooting images and videos whenever I go on a vacation. For the longest time, I used to carry a dedicated DSLR or a mirrorless camera along with a smartphone, but not anymore. I'm working on a few videos comparing the cameras on this phone with some of the other ones which I have, and those videos will be hitting your subscription box very soon. If you guys haven't checked out my video about the best cases for this iPhone 15 Pro, you can do that by clicking the link in the description section. So these were my thoughts about the cameras on this iPhone 15 Pro. You guys saw the images too, so what do you guys think about its cameras? Let me know in the comments. That is it for this video guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for a lot more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.